comes to supporting Israel's right to defend itself, but also trying to express concerns for the Palestinian people. And I want to read you a bit of how the White House describes that phone call between the president and the Israeli prime minister. They said the president noted that this current period of conflict has tragically claimed the lives of Israeli and Palestinian civilians, including children. He raised concerns about the safety and security of journalists and reinforced the need to ensure their protection. Now, this comes as you and Ben were talking about after an Israeli airstrike flattened that building in Gaza that was home to the Associated Press and a few other media outlets. And the White House has indicated that they've been stressing to the Israeli government that they need to ensure the safety and protection of journalists. But this is a situation that the White House has been working on for days, making phone calls to those regional partners in the Middle East. And the president is keeping a very close eye on this as they're hoping that these tensions will start to de-escalate soon.
They certainly need to de-escalate. I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. But Ben Wiedemann, Arlette Saenz, thanks so much for following all of this. We'll get back to you. And joining me now is the former Defense Secretary and former CIA Director, Leon Panetta. Secretary Panetta, always great to talk to you. Appreciate you coming by. What do you make of this airstrike destroying a building where journalists work? Should the Israeli Defense Forces be taking out buildings where there are journalists inside? Obviously, the journalists were given time to evacuate and so on, but they did take down that building.
Yeah, Jim, this is just another dangerous escalation in this conflict between the Israelis and Hamas. And it basically raises the concern that as events escalate and as the Israelis take more actions in Gaza, and as people take to the streets, that ultimately this could escalate into a war. So I hope that that Prime Minister Netanyahu and Abbas listen to Joe Biden's recommendation to begin to cool things, to try to achieve a ceasefire, and to try to end what I think is a dangerous conflict in that area.
And Secretary Panetta, President Biden, as you were just saying, he spoke with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu today, as well as the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. What should he be telling them in terms of de-escalating this situation? It sounds as though the president is going to be on the phone with both of these leaders on a regular basis for the next couple of weeks, at the very least.
Well, the first thing that I think is important is that I think President Biden is trying to return the United States to the role of an honest broker in trying to deal with the Israelis and the Palestinians. And I think that is the appropriate role for the United States. So I'm glad that President Biden is speaking to both parties. I think he's urging them to de-escalate, to try to achieve a ceasefire, and to try to engage in peaceful negotiations. That is the message that the United States should send. I hope that they listen to that.
And the UN Secretary General is calling for all parties to immediately cease fighting and allow for mediation to take place. That doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. How close is this region, do you think, to all-out war?
Well, that's what concerns me, is that, we've seen now almost 2,500 rockets fired from Hamas into Israel. They're trying to overwhelm the Iron Dome defense system, which is the system that can take down those kinds of rockets. We're seeing is the Israelis going after almost 670 targets in Gaza and dropping tons of weapons. And we're seeing people taking to the streets. And if you combine all of that together, it is a very different situation than what we've seen in the past, where there have been, relatively few exchanges. This thing is escalating. It's escalating in a dangerous way. And I think everybody needs to recognize that if we continue this tit for tat, ultimately the result is war.
That's right, and we've seen this cycle of violence play out time and again. Secretary Panetta, let me ask you this. You were once the head of the CIA. I want to ask you about that massive cyber attack that shut down the Colonial Pipeline and led to these gas shortages in the Southeast, some pretty crippling gas shortages just in the Washington, D.C. area alone. Sources tell CNN the company did, in fact, pay a ransom demanded by the cyber criminals. As somebody who was, once director of the CIA, do you think that was the right decision? Should companies be paying off these cyber attackers?
I don't like that because it sends a message to other attackers that all they have to do is shut one of our infrastructures down and they're going to get paid off. That's a bad signal to send. I would prefer that we develop both the defenses and the offenses necessary in order to confront these cyber attacks. This is the battlefield of the future. I've said that cyber can be used to virtually paralyze our country. We're seeing that begin to happen. We cannot just simply sit back, pay these guys off, and have this continue in the future, because frankly, we will pay a price for these kinds of cyber attacks, as we have, and it can affect our security.
And what about the tie to the Russians? How concerned should Americans be that this appears to be tied back to the Russians? It's not clear whether or not this was well known inside the Kremlin, but once again, we're dealing with a Russian menace here.
Well, we've seen Russia play this game before. They've cyber attacked us with regards to our elections. We saw them cyber attack us with regards to solar winds, going after industries and government agencies. And we're seeing these individuals coming out of Russia who impacted on this important fuel line. This is very close to becoming acts of war when people are seriously impacted by what these Russians are doing. I think the United States has to very strongly let the Russians know that this is not only unacceptable, but that if they continue to do this, they too are going to pay a price with regards to cyber warfare.
All right. Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, thanks so much for those insights. Always greatly appreciated. Coming up, HBO's Bill Maher and 8 members of the New York Yankees, did you hear about this? All testing positive for coronavirus despite being vaccinated. What does that tell us about the virus? I've got that question. I know a lot of you have that question. We'll ask an expert next.
Can you be free of hair breakage worries? We invited Maho to see for herself that new Dove breakage